great to get a chance to speak with you, my friend. We're gonna ask you right off the top, how are you holding up? Because I mean, what a crazy 2 years. COVID, Karens, elections, some really bad stuff. People passing away, the shootings. Up here in Canada, indigenous graves being found. Like so many crazy things have been happening. How have you been doing, and how have you been holding up, seeing and hearing all of these things, man?
Um, Guess I've added a lot of people to my prayer list. I've been praying for a lot of people recently, man, because so many things are happening right now. Not only all over the world, especially like back home, like in Trinidad and Tobago, and even Canada, my family in the U.S. and the UK and stuff, and yeah, just friends and family in general have been going through a lot, with the whole COVID. Some of them not being able to work, some of them being able to like do this stuff, some, going through other difficult times in terms of their health and everything else. And, then it's like also the split decision between taking the vaccine and not taking the vaccine. I got family that are like that as well. So it's been an up and down time, but I have to thank God I'm in post production for my movie, doing VFX, and just trying to concentrate on that and trying to help as much people as possible that's close to me. And yeah, I mean, I shot during the height of COVID, so it was a crazy ride, but thank God we finished and completed the movie, and was one of the few movies I completed on time during Hollywood, one of the few independent Hollywood movie on time.
Congratulations on that. Let's get right to it because, as we did talk about some of the tough times, the good things is the fact that entertainment, entertainers in your field like yourself, being able to make sure that we have a focus away from tough things, that we can just sort of sit back and just enjoy, our time watching things on the screen. You just mentioned about your film, and congratulations with that. What is the film called, and what is it about, please?
Film is called Lumina, Lumina. It's a science fiction movie. It's about a guy who loses his girlfriend in a blinding light, and then he goes into a whole rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and decides to take his friends along for a wild ride to go in search to find answers as to why she disappeared.
Where
And he
did
gets in
this
a lot of trouble on the way.
Where did this story come from? Like, did you develop this? Where did the story come from?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've developed all my own stuff. Um, it's it's something I wrote while I was in Florida by my uncle's house, basically like spending some time there with some of my family. And I wrote it in about 7 days. And yeah, I was coming off of one of my movies, Little Miss Innocent, that I was the first person to write about the deep web and the Bitcoin in Hollywood over 8 years ago. And first script to be circulated in all the top Hollywood agencies with all the agents, and first person to write about the deep web and the Bitcoin. And subsequently, there was a TV series that actually stole my IP and the whole idea and said they were the first, but that's not true because Medium wrote an article about me, and I also consulted with the FBI. And there's a whole article written about myself and about the deep web and Bitcoin, and I was the first person to write about it. So, yeah, what they say in Hollywood is if your stuff stays out there too long, sometimes it gets taken.
It's the
So,
truth, my friend.
so my
Absolute truth.
content, so the stuff I wrote at that point in time was way ahead of any Hollywood studio at that point in time. And as a writer of color, you face a certain amount of discrimination and pushback. And, I got delayed on that project and went into development hell. Even though I had a lot of A-list actors on that project. I had Ben Kingsley, I had like Tyrese Gibson, a bunch of guys were on that project. A-list actors were on my project attached to it. And they went into development hell because my lead got pregnant and pushed back the feature. And once it went into development hell and I couldn't get it off because I couldn't find another lead to take it up because there was a lot of problems I was having at that point in time. I went and I wrote Lumina. And what inspired me to write is that I never wrote about someone, the psychological effect on a person who loses someone to like an extraterrestrial experience. And the friends, how it impacts the friends, basically how they deal with someone being gone and they have no words to explain exactly how they're gone, or no rhyme or reason or any kind of like explanation that the police or the government could give to them. So you see like the psychological effect on them in terms of like how that disappearance happened. So I decided to write that story after like LMI had gone into like all that stuff, like everything else, and then I wrote it, and then I decided to develop it. But thank God LMI is coming back right now because everyone's asking me about that script because it was one of the best female female action scripts in Hollywood for the last 8 years. A lot of others have tried to copy it, like from Anna and all these other movies, but they still haven't been able to duplicate how well I wrote that one because I had all the elements. I'm going to be working on that, and yeah, I started developing Lumina, and Lumina. We got to a point where we were in 2020, and we got the financing, everything else, we're ready to go. And then we went over to Morocco and shot it. And I had Tunisia in line first, and then I also thought about shooting it in Malta. And yeah, I went to Africa. I went to the motherland. That was a real blessing to go to Africa. So I went and we shot in Morocco. Had the great landscapes, had a great cruise, had some of the best crews I've dealt with. And it's interesting because a lot of people have never shot sci-fi in Morocco, and I was the first ever to shoot a sci-fi movie in Morocco in its entirety, in its history. First Canadian director, first Trinidadian director, a director of Trinidadian descent, West Indian descent to shoot over there in Africa to shoot a sci-fi movie. So, and also Canadian as well. So I think it was quite an achievement, doing the first sci-fi film over there in Morocco because they've only shot period pieces and sword and sandal stuff like stuff like Kingdom of Heaven and stuff like that worked on. And I wanted to do something unique, and I did. I didn't even realize I created history until into the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks when my art director came over, and Aziz was like, "Yeah, this is the first sci-fi film we're ever doing in Africa." I'm in Morocco at that point in time, and yeah, everyone done that because they've done like a lot of FBI stuff, a lot of World
Yeah.
War II, a lot of World War II and World War One stuff. They've done double it for Iraq, and like the Gulf War and other things like that, and all the historical stuff. They've never done sci-fi. And it was interesting. It was interesting because um, the crews, being African, they've never worked on science fiction, even though they're like great crews and they're on par with the crews out in Los Angeles and Toronto, and they've never worked on it. And like it was great to see like from Africa working on a genre that's never given to them. So it was an interesting experience. It was a blessing though, I would say. And I really enjoyed my time over there. I'm going to shoot some other movies over there as well too. And we had a lot of problems a lot of obstacles along the way to developing the movie and getting it completed, but we got over those. And yeah, now I'm in post production.
What were some of the difficulties having in making this film from, of course, COVID, and because as you talked about different exotic locations, their COVID rules would be different, say, from another area. So getting this film done, what was that like to have to deal with that? And also, did weather and timing have any factors and difficulties in getting this done?
Travel because now I'll give you one example. My director of photography, my DP, his name was Larry Smith. He's famous for collaborating with Stanley Kubrick, and um, he sat and talked to me for like 2 hours when we first met on Zoom, and we clicked and really liked each other. He loved the script and he wanted to come over and work on it. And he came over and he shot the first 3 days, and I was shooting through Christmas, and he went back to the UK, and then the second strain of COVID hit, and he couldn't come back with my entire camera team.
Oh, well.
So then I flew over. Um, One of my friend Gabrielle, who just shot Black Widow with Scarlett Johansson, because he couldn't come because he was working on a project with Ron Perlman, and he sent the person that he worked with, an upcoming DP. And she came over and she was shooting during the Christmas. And when Larry couldn't come back, she had to shoot the entire movie with.
Wow.
So travel was restricted. COVID is very serious in Morocco. They take it very seriously. There's a lot of every 10 miles there's checkpoints, security checkpoints. It was locked down. There was a curfew. Um, we had passes to shoot after hours, so we could shoot at any time. So curfew rules didn't apply to us. We got special government authorization to do that. We encountered like 2 cases of COVID during pre-production. We had to shut down. There was a number of things that we had to overcome for that. Weather was because we're shooting in the wintertime. So it's funny because a lot of people think that, oh yeah, you're going to Africa and it's jungle because people are not too educated in terms of like the different topographies that they have in Africa. And Morocco during the wintertime is very cold in the day. It's very cold. It's 0 degrees Celsius. We're shooting and sometimes -2 in the Western Sahara. So I was shooting in the Sahara Desert. And we're shooting up mountain ranges that are like 70-degree inclines. And we shot and you're wearing your parking winter jacket, wearing two stuff out there at 0 and freezing degrees, and you're sitting in front of a monitor for 8 hours and you're shooting stunt scenes, you're shooting explosions, you're shooting like big stunt action scenes, and like you're going through that, and you're in the desert and it drops and it's like extreme weather. During the day,
Mhm.
like it's bright sunshine, you think it's nice and warm. No, it's like 2 degrees. And you're wearing a jacket too. And it's shooting out there. And it's like bright sunshine. So people have to understand the elements in the Atlas Mountains and also the Western Sahara and the Sahara Desert. They really don't understand Morocco and like even Africa because you have mountaintops with snow, you have everything. And the Atlas gets very cold. So you have mountaintops with like snow and you're going 12,000 feet up. The altitude's really high
Yeah.
and stuff like that, driving up there and everything else. So, and yeah, it's a lot of different weather you deal with. And that's also you get extreme heat. We missed, we were there like more in the temperate time because it was heading towards winter and shooting in January. So we shot in Ouarzazate, and that was at Claw Studios in the Atlas Mountains in the Western Sahara. And we had over 50,000 square feet of stages. Actually, now total probably over 75,000 square feet of stages.
Mhm.
And we built sets on those, and it was the biggest sets ever built in Morocco, interior sets ever built in Morocco history,
That's crazy.
and some of the biggest sets ever built in African history.
Wow.
So like, and like I went, everyone's like, why'd you choose Africa? Why'd you choose Africa? Why not?
True.
You get the stereotypes. You get the discrimination. You get the stereotypes because I know a lot of crews from Los Angeles that I try to bring over, even some from Canada. I was trying to bring over,
Mhm.
to shoot in Morocco, and they refused. They're like, Africa's ravaged with COVID. Um, some girls that were like in different departments were saying, "Well, am I gonna like? I'm afraid I might go over there and get raped if I go to Africa." And you get all this discriminatory, stereotypical type of comments from people that don't want to go, and that's what I got from crews in the U.S. and Canada, and people won't talk about it because I'm a director of color, and I'll talk about it. You know what I mean? And you get that type of discriminatory comments, and well, I'm stereotype of the country. I don't want to go to Africa and shoot a movie. And then when everybody went over, some of the people that were like so hesitant to do that and were like so worried about their safety ended up loving the country so much, loved Morocco, wanted to visit the rest of Africa, loved the people, loved the food. Two of them got engaged, Moroccan, same ones. Like one was really cool. My costume design. Um, she had a Moroccan ex-boyfriend and stuff like that, so she wasn't like that. The rest of them, oh yeah, they were very skeptical about this. And the funny thing is, Morocco is safer than LA.
Yeah.
The whole country, because the king of Morocco runs it really well. Government's very strict. The police over there are very strict. So it's like it's safer than anywhere. It's safer than parts of LA. You can go there. It's like really safe for tourists, really safe for people. despite what people talk about Africa and talk about different countries. Like, I mean, it was total nonsense. So like when I went over there, they loved it. And, their whole perspective changed that they actually started posting a bunch of pictures and everything about Morocco. They were talking about how they love the people and the food. And I'm like, wow, this is the same people that are skeptical about it. Anyway, when I was the one that brought them there the first time they went to Africa was because of me and my film. And, it's funny, but it was a real blessing. I'm going to go back and shoot. Anyone I suggest if you want to go shoot in Africa, research it and go and do it. Because
Amen.
the continent needs more people going over there, bringing a positive image to that, not the negative that's painted right
I was going to ask, who are some of the stars in this great film?
now. Eric Roberts, Julie Roberts' brother, as you
Mm-hmm.
know, is one of the stars. Ken Lawson, Sydney Nicole Rogers, Rupert Lazarus, Eleanor Williams, Emily Hall, and Andrea Tivadar. So like I mean, some of them are upcoming. Some of them are upcoming. Some of them are known a little bit more, like Eleanor and Ken, for example. Andrew, who's worked a number of the TV series, and of course, Eric Roberts is a legend. But I decided to go with a young team, a young upcoming cast, and they did great. They really put 200% into it. They put their heart into it. They love the country. They didn't come with any stereotypical thoughts or any kind of like generalizations. They came to love the country. They came to work, and they would go back there. And it was a blessing to have a cast that would work with me. That went along with a lot of my improv and how I direct. Because as a director, I don't only stick to the script. I like trying to experiment. I like doing improv. I like doing different things. So they went along with it, and it went great.
And that's what I was going to ask. When you're dealing with a legend like Eric, I mean, what is it like to direct him? And because of his experience, did he provide any, maybe suggestions or whatever that you might have taken? Or was he just like, you're the boss, whatever you need me to do, I'm there to do it?
Eric, Eric is a bit of both because you know why? I don't have at certain times, 90 something percent of the time, I don't need to direct Eric. Eric knows he comes prepared. Like we sat and we had dinner. And we talked about the role. We talked about life. We talked about everything. He asked me about Trinidad when I was born there. As from the islands and stuff. And he's a really cool guy. He's a great guy. He works with a lot of independent filmmakers, and he came to set prepared. I gave certain directions, yes, in terms of how I think about the character and how I think I wanted, how I think I want him to prepare psychologically for it and how to approach it. And he nailed that. It was like very little direction. It's like, our good friend Christopher Plummer, God rest his soul, that passed away. Like when I sat with Christopher many times, you don't direct Christopher. He knows, he gets it. You talk to him about like the character and everything else, and he comes on set and he's prepared. Eric's that type of guy. He's a thespian, so he knows what he's doing. So it's like it's very little direction. You just give him like a perspective in terms of how you see the film and go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he comes on, he's prepared. Some of the other actors, of course, you got to walk them through it because you got to deal with different techniques. Some are method, some are not. Some are Chekhov, some are this, like, and you got to deal with it and see exactly deal with the different techniques because, like, they don't approach it the same way. And just trying to find out psychologically how to get prepared for the role.
Right.
Um, Eric was great to work with because, like, he comes on and like he just gives you it 100%. He knows he gets it because he's done 600 movies.
Yeah. No, he's.
Hollywood actor with the most movies in Hollywood, right? So like, and I was like talking to him. He's like, "Yeah, I just came off of 2 other movies before I came here," and I'm like, okay. I'm like, "All right."
I love that, man.
And I'm like, "Okay," so like, ready to go. We did it, and like, yeah, and with the whole controversy right now with like Eric Baldwin and like guns
Mm-hmm.
on set and everything else, I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen it.
Yeah, like that's one thing about us. Our set was safe. You know, our set was safe. I decided myself and my first AD and the production services team, Dune Films, who's the best in Morocco and one of the best in Africa. I work with them. all people of color, by the way, that own the company, Africans, Moroccans, have done a number of films from Kingdom of Heaven to Babel to Old Guard. They've done some of the biggest films in terms of production services. Very experienced team, great team. I love working with them. Um, and yeah, they were like, we both agreed we're not going to go with real guns on set because it's a big process in Morocco. Because you bring a firearm on set, you have to have the military on set, and you have to have the police, and they control the gun, and they give it to and they test the guns, and they give it to the actor basically, before they even touch it. And that's before even a prop master or first AD or director, for the actor, and they're on set, mandatory. You cannot shoot without military and police on set in Morocco with live fire.
That's interesting, man. And that's a good
It's a
thing, and
process,
hopefully,
and the whole process. And I was like, and I used weighted toy guns.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric was like, "Oh, you sure it's gonna come across okay on screen?" I'm like, "Yeah, don't worry," because I do all my stuff in VFX and post. All the muzzle flashes and everything else like that. I don't need to do live ammunition because I just don't trust it. I don't trust it because like you never know, a malfunction, someone backfires, like and misfire. You never know. With like firearms, it could be like that. You know what I mean? Even with new stuff, like if you're using a Glock, if you're using like a 22, it doesn't matter. But for me, it was like weighted toy guns, and even if we did use, even if we wanted to use live firearms, you have to go through such a rigorous process in Morocco to do that. And it's not an armorer that's like 24 years old. It's a guy that's in his 40s, 50s, that's with the military, that's, a soldier or like, experienced like John Dunn, which is like the police
Mm-hmm.
in Morocco, and that has like over 20 years of firearms experience. So it's not someone who's green, and it's not left unsupervised. That's another thing. Never. So they're very strict over there, especially with firearms and stuff like that. So for me, it was like, our set was really safe, especially when it comes to COVID. We were testing all the time, and everything else. And we went through a very rigorous process in terms of testing and sanitation and everything else like that. And we went about it in a way we did. And we had we had an incident where we had to go non-SAG
Mm-hmm.
because SAG had done some really questionable things in terms of our production because we were a SAG signatory before. So we had to go non-SAG and ended up going non-SAG, and we still had our proper procedures in place. And I felt like if we were targeted because we're producing color, on a SAG production, and even our attorneys and other people felt the way one of the problems while shooting. And we're gonna talk a lot about that even more later on because I think people need to hear about it because I look at sets like what happened on Russ, Alec Baldwin, and the fact so many things were unsafe on that set. And I look at our set that was safe, and we got complaints from SAG. And I look at their set, no complaints from SAG at all. With the amount of people walking off from IATSE and everything else, and we were non-union. And we treated even IATSE members on our set, basically because, us DPs and everything else. And they were staying in five-star hotels, they were eating, they were getting breaks. It was a very safe set when it came to COVID and everything else. And, I'm looking at these other sets that basically are unsafe, and SAG and some of the unions are not saying anything, until people walk off, until someone gets killed. So, there's a certain amount of discrimination that happens with producers of color in the industry, in Hollywood, in Toronto, that they face that goes untalked about, unheard of. And, I faced that even here because going shooting over in Morocco, our insurance company, the people like that were asking like, 1,001 questions. And so many big movies are being shot in Morocco. Like right now, my friends are on Indiana Jones,
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Ford, and they're shooting over there right now. My crew, my key second, the key second on was one of the ADs on Indiana Jones, and my transportation coordinator is the transportation coordinator on Indiana Jones right now, and stuff like that. But you get all these questions because you're a producer of color questions that other producers that you know that are non people of color basically would not be asked and not be put to bring. So it was quite the experience going through this movie to see how the industry works because you're a director of color and the producers of color shooting in Africa and shooting at a time when other productions were shut down. And you're independently financed and you're running a great set and you're treating people very well, but you're also getting a lot of pushback, a lot of like resistance because of who you are and because you're in an industry that's very lucrative and they know, once as a producer of color, as a director of color, getting getting your film off and doing well with it means that creates and also inspires other people to do it too. So there's a lot to talk about that later on I will be mentioning in terms of when the movie comes out that I we faced. Being from the islands, come from Toronto, facing discrimination both in Toronto and Canada in the film and music industry, trying to get our projects off. And some of the stuff is unbelievable in terms of what people have said, what they've done. We've had banks in Canada that said they won't help us, but they could help us, but they won't help us. So, which led us to work with financing companies in the United States and back to the United States, and independent financiers that my mom knew because she was a very senior executive at Royal Bank of Canada, worked finance and everything else, and that's how we ended up getting people that trust us and believe in the projects. And it was unbelievable stuff that a lot of people need to hear.
When are we expecting to see this film?
Early 2022.
So January, February, somewhere around there.
We're hoping for it because right now I'm finishing up VFX and I go into sound and I go into color grading. So once that's finished, then yes. And then we show it to studios. We show it to the major studios and everything else and the audience testing. And then we're hoping to distribute it in early 2022. It could be March, could be January, February, March, around there.
Okay, and as we wrap this up, what are you hoping fans will get when they see this great film?
I'm hoping that they see something unique because it's a sci-fi adventure basically where you get to know the characters. They don't die off like immediately like other sci-fi films. You will get to know them. You get to actually go on a journey with them. You get to see how they're psychologically affected by this like paranormal or supernatural experience that they came across. And it's really shot beautifully and it's acted well. And I think that independent films right now, it's unique because it also sits between an independent film and a studio film.
Mhm.
So it's sitting in a unique position. It's not fully independent, it's a studio film. But it looks like a studio, but it's entirely independent. And the acting is great. The storyline is entirely unique because people haven't seen this perspective before. So I think that, they're gonna love it because they're actually gonna get to grow with the characters and see the movie.
Looking forward to it, my friend, when it comes out. Thank you so much for this interview. Thank you for your insight in creating this film, the ups and downs, but in the long run, the bottom line is no matter what, you were able to make this happen. I think that's where the inspiration falls into place. Thank you again for this interview, man. Looking forward to seeing the film and looking forward to talking to you again in the future, man, for other great films you're going to be putting together for us.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. And God bless you and everyone else and stay safe. And yeah, check it out. Check me out on Instagram. Gino at Gino McKoy, GINOMCKOY, and also on Facebook. And the movie, luminamovie.com. Thank you, everyone, and God bless, brother. Take care. Thank you for having me.